Hello, hello, hello. I am the Linux Mitch. Someone was asking me about using my scripts in Linux Mint. So today I'm going to talk about it. So let's get to it. So today I'm in a virtual machine of Linux Mint. And since the install, I made a few changes, but not a lot, but nothing with my scripts. The changes I made were just through the GUI, where I went and installed the weather app. I made a change to the format of the date, and what else did I do? Of course, I went into settings and I toggled on the firewall. I went into Power Manager and turned off the Power Manager, and I went into screensaver and turned off the screensaver because I don't like my computer going to sleep and my screen going off when the computer is inactive. And I also changed the theming to dark theme. So if you go into, let's say we go into the file manager, everything is dark theme. Okay, so other than that, I don't think there's any other changes I made. And any of the changes I did make were all through the GUI, which is easy for anyone to do. So what I'm going to do is open up the terminal. GNOME terminal is a terminal that comes installed with Linux Mint. And also bash is the shell that comes installed. So I'm just gonna type in the word last. And you can see I did this installation right here on Friday, August 25th. I made this install. And like I said, I just made some very simple GUI changes. So first of all, I'm going to clear the screen. So let's clear the screen. I'm going to download my GitLab repository, but Git doesn't come installed with Linux Mint, so you have to install it yourself. So you can go to the Software Center and install it, or you can install it in the terminal. And I'm going to install it in the terminal. I'm going to type in sudo git. Whoops, I did that wrong. I'm going to type in sudo apt install git. Let's hit enter. It's asking for my password. Put my password in, and now we're installing Git. And like I said, you could just go into the GUI Software Center and do that as well. But I like to use the terminal. So it's just going to take another moment and Git is installed. So let's clear the screen. And now I'm going to download my GitLab repository. I'm going to type in git clone https://gitlab.com artibis 1/mench.git. Now the thing is that if you don't remember this command or you think this command is too hard to type, I have this command in the show notes of every video. So you could just go up to one of my videos in YouTube, go into the show notes, copy it, and paste it in here. And of course, because this is Linux Mint and this is the GNOME terminal, copy and paste works just with your mouse. So you could just open up Firefox, go and copy it and paste it in here. So anyways, let's hit enter. And we just downloaded my GitLab repository. Let's clear the screen. And let's ls it. So we can see here, this is my mensch directory from my GitLab repository. Let's cd into it. Let's ls it. So we can see here I have an Arch folder, a Debian folder, a BSD folder, FreeBSD folder, and a Linux Mint Ubuntu folder. And that's what we're in right now. We're in Linux Mint Ubuntu. We're not in the Linux Mint that's based on Debian. And just for show and tell, in case you're brand new to my channel, I'm going to cd into the Arch folder first, just to talk a bit about it. So let's ls it. So this is my, you know what, let's clear the screen. And let's ls it again. So this is my Arch folder. And you can see there's quite a few files in there. And I'm going to open up this Autoapp file. Okay, so let's just cat it. Okay. So this is my Autoapp for Arch Linux. So the thing is, when I install Arch Linux, whether I'm doing the manual install or I'm using the Arch Linux installer, which I'm not using anymore because I think it's broken and it has bugs in it. But that's besides the point. When I do an Arch Linux install, regardless of whether it's manual or using an installer, I always do a base installation with root and no packages. And then after the fact, I make a user for myself. I give them sudo privileges and a password. And then I install all the apps that I like to use. And also apps that help the system run properly. And these are them there. You can see there's a lot of apps there. Because I install a base installation and I build it myself. So these are the apps, the music apps, video apps, the full LibreOffice program, the Light DM, the Login Manager, Firefox, uBlock Origin. There's apps in here to make Bluetooth work and so forth. And then after I do that, let's just ls it again. And you know what? Let's clear the screen. And let's ls it. And then after I install the apps, I run this other configuration file, which is called Runconfigs, which is right here. So let's cat it. So what I'm going to do is, let's not cat it, let's less it. I'm going to less run configs. So this is my run configs for Arch Linux. And what I end up doing is I copy a bunch of configuration files into my home directory. I copy some wallpapers for my window managers into my home directory. I copy my awesome configuration file. Actually, I copy the configuration files for awesome window manager and Qtile window manager. I copy files for LightDM. I copy files for vimrc. I copy files from my zeshrc. I got Zesh X resources. What else do I do? I copy files to start and enable Bluetooth. I copy files to start and enable LightDM. And I copy here in this run config, sets up the firewall to deny all incoming and enables the firewall to start when I reboot. So I use this run config file. So maybe you're wondering, well, this is about Linux Mint. Why are you talking about all your Arch configurations? And I'm going to get to that. Let's quit out of there. So the thing is that, well, let's cd out of there. Okay. Oops. Let's cd out of there. I'm used to using Zesh. This is the bash shell, and I'm not used to the bash shell because I use Zesh shell. But anyways, let's cd back into Mensch, my Mensch repository, and into, let's ls it, and let's cd into Linux Mint. And let's clear the screen, let's ls it. So here you can see I hardly have any files in here. And let's cd into my Autoapp, or actually let's cat my Autoapp. Okay, that's my Autoapp. There's nothing in there. Well, there's a few things in there. I made this Autoapp, and that's another thing I would want to say to you, is that if you downloaded my GitLab repository a while back, I made changes in it this weekend. I made changes with it on Saturday, and I made changes with it on Sunday, and today is Monday, by the way. So if you're using my GitLab repository and you already downloaded it, you should be doing this. cd into my mensch folder, and then do git pull. And you can see it says it's already up to date, but if you downloaded it a while back and you do a git pull, it's going to download all the changes I made. So anyways, let's go back into my GitLab. Oh, I'm already in there. Let's ls it. Let's cd back into this Linux Mint Ubuntu folder. And I got to do a capital. I hate bash. Let's ls it. So like I said, there's hardly anything in there. Let's ls it again. Whoops. Let's ls it. Like I said, there's hardly anything in there. Let's cat my Autoapp. And I just made this file yesterday, and all it's going to do is it's going to install the awesome window manager, Vim, Zesh, and Xterm. And that's it. And the reason why I just made this yesterday and I didn't make this file a long time ago is because Linux Mint is easy to get stuff. There's two different types of graphical software centers in Linux Mint. And just in case you didn't know that, let's minimize this. There is their main software center, the Linux Mint software center, which is here. And you can just do a search. Let's do a search for awesome. So here it is here, the awesome window manager, and you can download it. And then there's also the Synaptic Package Manager, right? So you could go in here and type in SYN, and it's going to ask for your password. And this is also a graphical package manager where you can, let's do a search for Firefox. Okay. And here it is here, Firefox. And you can download things in here as well. So going back to my terminal, like I said, I just made this particular file yesterday. So the reason why I don't have an Autoapp in Linux Mint, because Linux Mint gives you everything you're going to need. When you install Linux Mint, everything is going to be there that you need to make your system run. And all the apps are there. And if there's an app that's not there, then there's two different graphical package managers that you can go into, or software, I should say. There's two graphical software centers that you can go to do a search and download an app. So I didn't make a file. So yesterday I made a simple one. So if you want to run this, I mean, you can just go into the graphical packages and download these apps. But if you want to download them, you could run this file. It's going to install the awesome window manager, Vim, Zesh, and Xterm. And Qtile window manager is not available on Linux Mint, by the way. So let's run this file. So I'm going to clear the screen. And I'm going to put a period and a slash. I'm going to type in Autoapp. I'm going to hit enter. And it's installing the packages. So it's installing those 4 apps that are in that file. But you could easily just go to the software center and do it. And that's done. It took a few moments, but it's done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log out, and I'm going to show you what the default awesome window manager looks like in Linux Mint. So what we're going to do is pull down here, click on this, and we're going to click on awesome. And we're going to put our password in. And it's going to take us into the default awesome window manager. So now we're in the awesome window manager. And my configuration file is not in here yet. We're going to put it in. And I just want to mention this, and this is why I brought you here first, is that I know it looks the same as the default awesome window manager in Arch Linux, but it's not. Well, it's very close, but it's not exactly the same. And what it is that this menu in the default awesome window manager in Arch Linux, this menu is bare bones. There's like maybe 4 things in it or 5 things in it. But this is coming from Debian, and it has a menu in it that has all your apps in here. Here's Firefox. Let's see if it opens. And it opens. Okay, let's close it. So it has a menu in here. Everything's in here. It has all the apps and everything is in there. Okay. And this menu is interactive in the sense where if you install a new program, if you download a new app, it's going to add it to the menu. Now, the default menu that's in the Arch Linux Awesome Window Manager only has about 4 or 5 things in there, and it's not interactive. So when you download new apps, it doesn't throw it into the menu. You have to go into the configuration file and put it in the menu. And that goes for my configuration file as well. Now in my configuration file, if you've been watching my videos, my Awesome Window Manager menu has a lot of apps in there and it's larger font, but it's not interactive. So when I download a new app, I also have to add it to my configuration file. So, and of course the bar is at the top like it is in Arch Linux, and it's very small. The clock is at the top, it's very small. And workspaces are at the top and they're very small and hard to read. And the whole bar is at the top. So I'm only telling you about this interactive menu because maybe you don't want my configuration file. But if you do use my configuration file, you can always go back to this one. So anyways, I'm going to log out. Let's quit. And we're going to go back into the Cinnamon desktop. I'm going to put my password in. And now we're back in the Cinnamon desktop. So I'm going to go into the terminal. I'm going to open it up. Let's cd into Mensch. Let's ls it. Let's cd into Linux. Oh, this is bash. There we go. Let's ls it. Now, let's ls. So I showed you my run config file. So I have a run config file here. So I already showed you earlier in this video, the run config file for Arch Linux is long and it has a lot of lines in there. It doesn't install anything, but it takes my configuration files and puts them where I want them to be. It sets the rules for the firewall and so forth. So of course, we're not going to set any rules for the firewall here in Linux Mint because the firewall is set in the GUI. So anyways, let's cat it and see what's in there. And that's it. So the only thing this script is going to do, it's going to copy 3 wallpapers into your home directory. And those are wallpapers that I use for the Awesome Window Manager and Qtile Window Manager, but Qtile is not available in Linux Mint, so that's besides the point. And the only other thing it's going to do, it's going to copy my awesome configuration file into the place where it needs to be. And that's it. So, like I said, someone was asking me if he could use my scripts for Linux Mint, and he can. And that's why I did this video. So really, the scripts that I have for Arch Linux, and I showed you earlier in the video, I showed you my Autoapp, which is a whole paragraph of apps. And I showed you my Runconfigs for Arch Linux, and it has about 8 lines. The script has about 8 lines or 10 lines of things it's going to do when I run the scripts. That's because I'm building up my Arch Linux from a base system into a full operating system. But Linux Mint has everything there that you need. Anyways, I made this simple thing, and I'm going to show you how to use it. So I'm going to run this config file. It's going to copy these 3 wallpapers and my awesome. Whoops. So let's clear the screen and let's type in /run. And that's it. I copied 3 wallpapers there and it set my awesome. So let's get out of here and let's log out. Let's log into awesome. Let's put my password in. And now we're in the awesome window manager with my configuration file. And of course, you see my menu. So you see the bar is at the bottom. The clock is nice and larger and easy to read, and it's reformatted. My workspaces are larger, and so forth. And then I have my menu. And this menu has all the apps in it. Let's open up Firefox. And there's Firefox. Now, Firefox this is a fresh installation of Firefox, so I haven't hardened it. Normally, when I open up Firefox, when I do a new installation, I'll go into Firefox and I get rid of all that junk and I harden it and I set all the settings to be hardened and I get rid of all that junk. I haven't done anything with it yet. So that's bare bones, or sorry, that's the default Firefox installation. So let's say you decide that you don't want my configuration file. You want to use the default one. So you could go into Nemo, click on your right button, click on Show Hidden Files, go into this config folder, and this awesome folder, what you could do is you could delete it, and then you'll be back to the default configuration. Or if you don't want to delete it, because you might want to go back to it, you could just change the name. So let's change the name. Let's rename this folder. I'm just going to call it awesome period save. There you go. And I'm going to close Nemo. And I'm going to right click. And I'm going to go to restart. And now we are in the default configuration, the Linux Mint or the Debian default configuration of the awesome window manager. And if I right click it, see, so you see the bars on the top, everything is small, the clock is up here, the workspaces are up there, my menu is gone, and this interactive menu is there with all your things. And let's just do an HTOP. We're running at 392 megabytes of RAM. So let's close that. And now if we want to go back, we just have to find Nemo. I don't know where Nemo is in this. Nemo is somewhere in here, but another way to get to things, and there's another menu in the Awesome Window Manager which works with this default system and also with my configuration file. And that's the mod key, hold down and hit the P, and it brings up a menu on top. And then, now you can't use your mouse with this, but you can just type in Nemo. Oops. Let's type in files. There we go. And we go back to configuration. Let's rename that. Rename. Let's take out the save and the period at the end of awesome. Enter. Close it. Go top here and go to restart. Now, this is not restarting the computer. It's just restarting the awesome window manager. And now we're back to my configuration file with the bar on the bottom. The workspaces are nice and large. The clock is formatted nice. And you have a nice large menu. Let's open up HTOP. And there we are. We're in HTOP. And we're running at 368 megabytes of RAM. So I gave this virtual machine 4 processors, 4 gigs of RAM, and the 980 megabyte swap was automatically given to it through the installation. Because normally when I do my Arch installations, I don't use the swap. I don't use swap. But I don't care if I lose a gig of swap. So that's the awesome window manager. So now I'm going to log out. Let's just quit. Now we're just logging out of the awesome window manager. We're not shutting down the whole system. And I'm going to click on this menu, and I'm going to go back to Cinnamon. And I'm going to put my password in. And now I'm back on, oops, there you go. And now I'm back on the Cinnamon desktop. So another thing is that, let's open up this. Let's go back here. Let's cd into Mensch. Linux. Let's LS it. Let's go into Autoapp. Let's just cat it. Cat Autoapp. So we installed the awesome window manager, but I also installed Vim, Zesh, and Xterm. Let's clear the screen. Let's see if my Zesh is working. Let's type in Zesh. Ah, and now my Zesh is working, and it's using my configuration file. My configuration file of Zesh. Now let's see if it's working in root. Let's switch into root. Put my password in, and now we're in root, but we're in bash. Let's type in Zesh and see if it's working. And it's working. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the Zesh my default shell for Linux Mint, for my user, and for root. So whenever I reboot or shut down and I log back in, Zesh is always going to be the default shell for Mensch and root. Okay, so now I'm in root. I'm just going to stay in root. You can do it in your user and use sudo, but I'm going to just stay in root. It's easier. And I'm going to cd out of there. And I'm going to type in. And before I do that, I'm going to do something else first. You know what? Let's close the terminal. I'm going to close this. I'm going to do that, but before I do that, let's do this. I'm going to go to Xterm, and I'm going to pin this to the bottom. Just to make it easier, I'm going to pin it to the panel. There you go. There's Xterm. Now let's type in Zesh. There we go. Oh, that's better. So we've been using the GNOME terminal, and like you cd into Mensch / Linux. Let's do cat auto. So like I said, we installed Awesome, Vim, Zesh, and Xterm, because Xterm doesn't come installed by default in Linux Mint. You have to install it yourself. So right now we are in Xterm, and we're using the Zesh shell. Now I want to copy a configuration file over into, I want to copy my Vim configuration file over into the proper place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd out of here, and I'm going to switch into root. No, you know what I'm going to do? I'm not even going to switch into root. I'm going to type in sudo nemo. I'm going to put my password in. And now I'm in the Nemo file manager with sudo privileges, with elevated privileges. You can see right here, elevated privileges. Okay, so now I'm going to go home. And actually, I'm not going to go home. I'm going to go file system. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go Mensch. And I'm going to go into this Mensch here, because this Mensch is the Mensch folder that I downloaded from my GitLab repository. So I'm going to click it on. And then I'm going to right click. Oh, show hidden files. That's good. And now I'm going to go into the Linux Mint Ubuntu folder, and I'm going to make sure my show hidden files are on. And I'm going to go to this vimrc. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to copy. Then I'm going to go back to the file system. I'm going to go to Etsy, and I'm going to scan down here. To this Vim folder. And I'm going to open up this Vim folder. And there's already a vimrc in there, but I'm going to replace it with the one I just copied from my Mensch repository. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to paste it in. Now it's asking me if it's telling me there's an original file there. Do I want to replace it with this one I'm pasting in? And of course, the answer is yes. I'm going to replace it. There we go. And you know what? I'm just going to make sure it's right. So I'm going to touch it, and I'm going to open it with text editor. And I'm looking for these things down here, this paragraph, and they're there. These are my configurations that I use for Vim, which are not there by default. You have to put them in. And I want to make sure they're there, and they are. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this. And now I'm going to check to see if it's working. So now it's still automatically going, well, I'm in GNOME. Let's get rid of that GNOME. I'm going to open up Xterm, but I'm still in, so now I'm in Xterm, but I'm still in Bash. So what I'm going to do is, first I want to test to make sure that my vimrc is working properly. So let's just type in dash. Let's clear the screen. And I'm going to vim into my zashrc file. And I'm only doing this not to check my zashrc file. I'm doing this to check my Vim, to make sure my Vim configuration works. And it is. I have my numbers there. It's beautiful. Now let's get out of there. Now I'm going to vim into a new text. I'm going to do test period txt. And that's working, because if I didn't put my vimrc file in, you would have down, you'd see number 1 up here, and then down all the way here, you'd see all those squiggly lines. They're called the tilde. You see tilde all the way to the bottom of the screen, and I hate those. I can't stand them. So my configuration file my Vim configuration file gets rid of those squiggly lines, the tilde, on empty line spaces, and it also puts the numbers in. So let's close the file. So one more thing I want to do, and then I'm going to close the video. So now what I want to do is I want to make Zesh my default shell and not Bash. So like I said, when we open up a terminal, whether we open up the GNOME terminal or we open up Xterm, Bash is the default shell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Xterm because I like it better. And I'm going to go to, let's just switch into root. Well, before I do that, let's type in Zesh. You want to make sure Zesh is working for your user and for root before you do what I'm about to do, because otherwise you won't be able to log into your system. So we know it's working. Let's just switch into root. Put password in, and now we're back into Bash. So I'm going to type in Zesh. Let's clear the screen. So we know Zesh is working for the user and for root. Now I'm going to type vim Etsy password without the O and without the R. I'm going to hit enter. And the very first line, we want to go to the end of it and very carefully type in Zesh. And then we want to save it. And then I'm going to do a search for Mensch, because look at all these lines here. And now I'm at Mensch, and I want to go to the end of the Mensch line, which is line 46. You can see near the bottom there, line 46. I'm going to go to the end. And I'm going to change that very carefully. I'm going to change it to Zesh. And I'm going to save the file and get out of there. Now, you either have to be in root or you can go in as your user, but you have to use sudo. Now, another thing is when you go into this file to do this, you have to be very careful that you don't accidentally change something or delete something, because one time I accidentally changed one letter or one word or number in a line that was in that file, and I couldn't log into my system. Now, I fixed it, but it took a while for me to figure out why I couldn't log into my system. So you have to be very careful when you're in that file. So now, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to log out. Let's log out. And let's log back in. Put my password in. And let's open up a terminal. Let's open up the GNOME terminal first. And there we are. We are in Zesh by default. Let's SU it. Well, I'm switching into root. Put my password in. And in root, I'm in Zesh as well, by default. Now let's close this. Let's open up Xterm. And I'm in Zesh. And isn't Xterm a lot nicer? I love Xterm. And let's switch into root. And I'm in Zesh as well. So, I really don't have a lot of apps or configuration files to put in Linux Mint, because Linux Mint has everything you need. But that's what I do. So today I talked about I explained why I don't have a lot of a script for installing a lot of apps or a script for running configuration files for Linux Mint, because Linux Mint has everything you need, almost. And it has a great software center. It has 2 software centers in the GUI. So I showed how I do have a simple script to install a few apps and a few configuration changes I like to make in the terminal. And of course, today I didn't show the configuration files I make in the GUI because they're easy to do, and I have lots of videos about that. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you learned something, please like it and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. I am the Linux Mitch. Bye-bye.